Again, people will be able to see your names and everything like that. If you do not wish to be recorded, please drop now and we will have it available up on our YouTube channel that you can listen to later. Thank you very much. And at this point, I will turn it over to Scott, the man of the hour.
Thank you, sir. So today we are going to talk a little bit about some products in Entra, which is Microsoft's Active Directory rebranded, rename product. And we are going to talk about identity governance, and specifically, we're going to talk about user workflows. So, as one of the things that we are progressing down the line is trying to increase your overall less work, more vacation. So, in that idea, under identity governance, we have lifecycle workflows. This is in preview, so please be cautious at the time of this recording. It's in preview. But this is really interesting, and I think you're going to enjoy this. So we've had a lot of discussion about this so far in my with a lot of my customers, and so I thought this would be a great idea to get started. Um, I won't be able to go through everything in this demo, but I do want to reference that there are a lot more different definitions and features that I won't be able to tackle. But we are going to start with some basics, and you'll get the idea as we go along. This create workflow and overview section are in here. You'll notice that I have some feeds in here. So my workflow schedule does every 3 hours, and my schedules and disabled. And you're like, okay, this is great. What's this whole workflow thing about? Well, it's basically a way to start the identity governance in your processes. So currently, we have some basic workflows set up in template format for you, which is kind of great to get started because, um, you might not know, you don't know anything about the product, you want to get started. So these are broken up into basically two distinct categories, leavers and joiners. So that's the people that onboard into your environment, coming on as new hires or new students, and then those ones that are leaving. Now, that being said, these are highly customizable. So I encourage you not to take it off the table until you really look into it because there's a whole bunch of things in this. Um, the other thing is one of the, I would say, more unpleasant categories, which we only have one, is on demand. And the reason being is this is a real time employee termination task. Now, that's one of those conversations people don't like having, but as IT professionals in security, you know it happens, right? You get that call, hey, I'm about to have a meeting with so and so. In a couple minutes, you need to take care of that. Oh, okay. But we're going to go with the positive experience today. And we're going to start with a couple other things because I want to talk to you about some of the experiences that you may have. And you're like, well, how is this going to work? Well, we're going to start with onboarding a pre hire employee. Pretty interesting, right? Now, both of these templates in the first one, onboarding a new employee and onboarding a pre hire, a little bit the same, but obviously they're a little different because they're categories. But I want to go through this real quick and then I'll show you the differences. So, in this case, what we start out with is some basic information. You can name all your workflows and put a great description in there. There are trigger details automatically assigned to these templates. If you'd like to build a workflow from scratch, we can do that. Maybe we'll do that in a minute. But as you do this, days from event, so this is the numbers before the employee pre-hire date attribute, and this is key, right, to doing this. So um, when to trigger this event. So we're going to configure the scope. Now in this scope, I've got it the default setup, but you can add additional expressions in here. So this is a rule-based scope type, right? And you notice that is kind of how it's set, right? The scope type used to set when the user is executing this workflow, right? So it's a rule based, right? And I'm going to say that in this case, you got a property of department and equals marketing, and I want to do this. Now you can change these values, that's not a problem. And if I drop this box down, you'll notice these attributes look really familiar. So as you're thinking about how you want to do your workflows, this is where you can go in and customize that. So it's really interesting how all this works. You can go by job title or maybe employee type, or if you're using extended attributes on-prem, you can do that as well. The next part gets, oh, and I could add additional expressions. So you can do and not, or not, right? So you can combine these into a really complex process. So if their department is marketing and they have employee type or job or, whatever the case may be, you can get those in there, right? And do additional. We're going to leave that out for right now, but so as we do this, here is a task pane, which one of them is already created. Now, this one's a little interesting because remember, this is an onboarding pre-hire employee. So they haven't been to the org yet. It could be 7 days before they're actually getting hired, right? But you're getting them set up. So one of the things is that you can do, and I'm going to click in this real quick so you can see this functionality, is it's going to generate tap and send email. Well, first of all, what's tap? Well, tap is a temporary access pass created for the user, and it allows them to sign in to your org, right, for a specific amount of time. So that way, you can onboard that employee. Now, in this case, in this template, the to recipient, you'll notice, is the manager attribute on the user profile. So what happens is the manager of this employee will get an email 7 days ahead of time with their temporary access password set up for a one-time use by the employee, not for the manager, right? And I'm going to give that activation duration 8 hours. That seems really like short because I gave this 7 days before the prior. So the idea here is that the manager is going to reach out to the employee and do this. So maybe we should make that 7 days since it could be any time in there, right? And so you can adjust this. Is it a one-time use? Yeah, maybe, yes, no. That's for you to decide. Each organization's different. I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. But one thing to keep in mind, temporary access pass also satisfies MFA requirements. So in this case, you can use temporary access pass to have an end user set up a device that's been auto-piloted in Intune. They can use their temporary access pass to log on to their machine that you've sent them, and they can then onboard that device through autopilot. It will prompt them that they need their MFA credentials. The tap will allow them to set up their MFA process through their authenticator app. And basically that user is now passwordless, right? So they could use that tap password. You would set that to no. You allow them to use that tap password. Or if you say, no, that's not really my thing, but I want them passwordless, so I'm going to give them that option. Your choice. So as you do this, you can save out these. One of the beauties of this is that if I'm sending this and I expect the manager to help them get logged in the very first time, that could be the case. Now, in the case of some orgs, ones I know of specifically, they basically do this process, and the manager is able to kick this off through a process. And I won't talk about that, but there's another process to do this. And they can kick this off while they're on the phone with the employee that's about to be onboarded, or it's their very first day, correct? And in that case, what they do in this particular company, they give them 10 minutes and they get to use it one time. And this is how they get their employee onboarded to set up their username, password, go through the self-service password reset questions, get their MFA set up and everything. And that gives them the ability to do that. If they fail at some point, the manager says, hey, no problem, I'm on the phone with you while you're getting things set up. I'll just go ahead and grant you another temporary access password, and you'll have another 10 minutes to get yourself out of Hawk, right? Either way, that's up to you. Your org, every org's different, so I'm not going to say. The other thing is you have the availability to add additional tasks. So, for instance, we were talking about joiners, and so in this case, if they were in the marketing department, I want to make sure that I'm adding that user to that specific group, right? I want to enable their user account, and I want to send them a welcome email to the new hire. So, right, add the user to a selected teams. That makes sense. But one of the things is that you can run a custom task extension. What's that? That's interesting. Well, what that is gives you the ability to run a logic app. So anything you can design in Azure as a logic app, which for those of you that done logic apps, you know that you can do just about anything in the world in a logic app. So that gives you the capability of doing that above and beyond your normal process. Beautiful little process. I'm going to take that one out temporarily because we're going to go through. And we'll just send them a nice welcome email. Well, that's great. What's this welcome email? Well, this is something that's sent directly to the user. So maybe it's not on 7 days ahead. Maybe you want a different workflow for the day they start, right? Um, the mail itself is done in a different section. We can talk about that another time, but basically this template is set up somewhere else. So the user's email address is automatically populated from the mail address, so you're all set and ready to go. And then all you do is review and create, and that process gets started on creating that workflow. That workflow is put in your list, and then you can schedule this. It is enabled, and you'll notice that I had a piece in there when the department equaled marketing. But you can go ahead and schedule that. Oops, didn't check it there. So I can enable a schedule for this. And now it is scheduled. Well, how do I see that? I don't know. Well, you'll notice over in the preview section, it was in my scheduled and enabled. So I can see those workflows and which ones are scheduled. Okay. And I can do that. Now, if for some reason I needed to run that on demand, I have that capability. Over in here, you'll notice that there's a view workflows. Hey, my onboard pre-hire. Yes, it's scheduled. And this runs once every 3 hours. Now you could change that if you needed to. I could disable that schedule, right? Your choice, but you're able to do that. Pretty slick little operation. There is some pieces in here. I could do a couple other things. I won't go into too much detail on that. There are custom extensions. This also is in preview. But these custom extensions allow you to do different things. So as you do this, you can create a task behavior. So this lifecycle workflow, you can have a logic app, a text attached to it as a custom extension. So you can have it launch and continue in the workflow, or you could have launch and wait, consider a task in progress until the logic app responds. So either way, this would be your parallel or serial, depending on how you do it. And this capability allows you to go in and do it to a certain piece. You can put that logic name in there. Probably not good. And then you can create that logic app. And when you do that, I'll let that bake for 1 second. Questions so far? Comments, concerns? Somebody watching in the chat for me, please. Oh, somebody put some YouTube in there, huh?
Yeah, I'm watching the chat.
Okay. All right. Deployment
Can
successful.
onboarding
So
packages be used with this? From Carson Thomas.
So onboarding packages. Let's see. What would we talk about? Mm,
I don't know if an onboarding package can be used with this because it assumes that they have access to get to the onboarding package.
oh. I know what he's talking about now. Okay. All right. So let's talk about that a little bit over here. And we're going to create a workflow. And let's go over here and we'll select this one. Yes, I would think you would be able to do that because I'm pretty sure in a Logic app you can assign somebody to an onboarding package. That we will need to research. Interesting to see applied to a new student use case. Oh yes, new students. That's the other thing. That's interesting, right? Because you're going down that piece. Now this is still in preview, so there's a little bit of kinking working out here. But you'll notice here days from event, and then it based on the employee hire date. So this attribute really isn't available to me yet. So I can't really get to that, but you'll understand what I'm saying is it's not quite there yet. Um, right, yes. And that's another piece that we were talking about, and I have not found a piece in here yet to do that. Of course, this is in preview, so I have limited access. But as you do this, you know, create custom workflow by split and then modify the task and conditions. Well, that's really great, but there's some things in there that aren't quite baked into the process yet. So you've seen that
Scott,
where I couldn't change it.
Scott, I had a quick question. So in this process, can we, so as the person gets onboarded, they reset their password, that's all squared away. Can they immediately have access to like a training site for their department?
Yeah, so one of the people that I've talked to and they're doing some testing right now is they're in the welcome email that they send.
Hmm.
They have set it up where they used a Logic app because the tool does have some limitations, right?
Hmm.
Because it's in preview, and they made a customized template email in the Logic app that sends them their welcome email day one and then
Hmm.
directs them to Viva Learning for their
Got it.
mandatory training.
So, hey,
But
Got it.
I'm
Scott,
sure you could do that to anything. Yes.
another question. So John was asking about the new student use case where they might not have a one-to-one relationship with a manager per se. Is there a way to put an external email address in there rather than a manager so that the email goes to, let's say, that student's,
Yeah.
private
So there
inbox?
are some limitations right now, and I do see that capability coming. From what I've understand is the fact that you can use the Logic app to pick another field that would go into that so that you can do that. So it's a little bit it's in preview. So there are some things that we just don't know yet, but I do see some of the pieces that I asked some of the technical questions from higher up, and yeah, I
And
think that is a possibility.
I wonder at some point in time if it would be possible to create a form to gather some information on the student that would fill out the Logic app and then at that point kick off sending that one-time password to them. Because
Right.
obviously, within higher ed, we like to they like
S-
to have people claim their accounts.
mhm.
Yeah.
And this way they can, maybe use a form, put some information with your What's your social security number, your birth date, or whatever, and then we can check
Right.
that with an external database. If it matches, then go ahead and.
Yeah,
Yep.
Steve. I think Steve or Scott, what Steve is saying, maybe going through the verified credential. What's the other one that it goes through that LexisNexis and confirms that the person is saying in fact who they are
Mm-hmm.
before that probably would come before this process here.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, this is all going to be integrated into ChatGPT. So.
Yeah. 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 Okay.
Hey, I have a Twitter Blue account. So.
Okay. So one of the things I was looking at, and I'm thinking that you can do, so temporary access pass is not just a workflow process. That is baked into your users. So if you did not know that, you do have to set this up, and there's a whole bunch of things and blah 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 blah. So there's my um, piece of advice, that you have to do some setup. There is a piece inside the authentication method, and you can add an authentication method, and you can add temporary access password, and you can delay the start time if you want, and your duration is in here, and decide if it's a one-time use or not. So this is not just a workflow process. Temporary access pass is part of Azure Active Directory, so that is one of the pieces in there. Now, the piece that would be interesting that I was thinking about was the fact, are you able, which I'm pretty sure that you can do, is create the temporary access password request in a workflow, in a Power App workflow, which means you could do it from a Power App form, like Steve was just talking about. So I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to do that.
So Scott, if I was to look at the onboarding journey of let's say a faculty, right?
Mm-hmm.
So initially they would come in and come in through the ERP system, right? Workday, PeopleSoft, or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
The identity will get populated to depending on the setup, on-premises Active Directory, let's just say, and then the identity gets synced up to the cloud. Where does this process, what you talked about, where does that fit in? Is it right after when it syncs up to the cloud?
Yeah, so it's based on the synchronization to the cloud. So if you're using AD Connect, and then based on the schedule of the workflows that you set up.
Mhm.
So in the identity governance under the lifecycle workflow, the previews in here. Now the schedule enabled, right?
Mhm.
You'll notice that it's every 3 hours, right?
Okay.
You'll also notice, because in preview, I have no capability to change that schedule time. It's 3
Mhm.
hours. That is a problem, obviously, in some cases, but in this case, I believe that is the only option I have at this current time. I do believe so.
Okay. So this part will happen, and you will have, let's just say, if I decided to set up a group-based licensing, that's going to happen in parallel to this, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right, got it. So I'm my
Yep.
user who's going to get licensed automatically depending on which group they fall under. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say A5 for faculty. They will have the right licenses. And I think that lead time, the 3-hour lead time, is good because that's going to give some time for the mailbox to be created, right?
Correct.
So once the mailbox is ready, Microsoft 365 environment is ready, then the user can go in and reset their password or go through their training and whatnot. and kick things off of themselves.
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Awesome. Any other questions for Scott? Amazing presentation, Scott.
All right.
Really insightful.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll stop that recording and.